Hey folks, this is David Wheeler. Welcome back to MUCK. My good friend and co-host Mo Davis is going to introduce our special guest today. Take it, Mo.
Well, thank you. And it's a real honor to have now a candidate. He wasn't a candidate last time he was on. David Jolly is back with us. And a couple of things have changed since you were on before. Number one is you're running for office, and number two, you're officially a Democrat. So welcome to the team.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mo. I appreciate that. Listen, I am a Democrat running for governor of the state of Florida, and I think the most important message is that Democrats can win in Florida in 2026. And I think they can win in a lot of state governorship races. And maybe for those who are allied with the Democratic Party, these are the races we should look at. We are in the midst of a national change environment right now. Arguably next year would be the 6th year of a president with numbers who are underwater. People are still suffering from an economic crisis. So we're in a change environment. And in Florida, we have a real affordability crisis. And so this is a governorship race where we are talking about property insurance, property taxes, safe communities, investing in public education, right? Issues that matter at the moment for voters in Florida. Maybe they're a little different than voters in Michigan, California, Texas, and otherwise. But understand, if we focus on fixing the affordability crisis in Florida by applying democratic values, I see 3 values: a economy that works for all people, a government that actually efficiently provides services to people, our seniors, our veterans, those in need, those who need quality, excellent public education. So an economy for all people, a government that works, and finally, a state that lifts everybody up, regardless of where you were born, the color of your skin, who you love, who you worship. Those are the core values. If we provide those values to attack the affordability crisis in Florida, the issues that matter to Florida voters, we'll win this next November. And what we will do is we will reset political power, not just in Florida, but arguably nationally going into the 28 presidential cycle. Notice, Mo, nothing I just said has anything to do with Donald Trump.
Yep.
My opponent on the other side of the aisle is already trying to make this race about Donald Trump. He just cannot talk about the affordability crisis or schools or property insurance or property taxes. He's got to make it about Donald Trump. If he does that, but we focus on the voters, on the issues that matter to them right now, we'll win this thing.
Yeah. So are you referring to Byron Dornan?
Byron Donalds, right. He actually came out shortly
Yep.
after I announced. The next day he said, look, I know Florida. Florida wants more of the same. No, we don't. No, we don't. This is a lived experience for my wife and I with a 6-year-old and 4-year-old. We are testing the question next November. Do you want change or do you want more of the same? We believe people want change.
Well, I guess some of the others on the Republican side are, I guess Casey DeSantis is thinking about it. Matt Gaetz, that quite a cast of characters on the other side. Any preference on who you'd prefer?
No, look, the more the merrier. I mean, I think in many ways, Republican politics today help our argument on behalf of change, right? There are not enough, Democratic registered voters in Florida to elect a Democratic governor just by themselves. We need a coalition of voters who want change. And so if we are in a change environment in the midst of a state affordability crisis, do you want Donald Trump's handpicked candidate and Byron Donalds? Do you want a 3rd term of Ron DeSantis? Do you want Matt Gaetz? That's more of the same. That's more of the same. We are offering a coalition bigger than a candidate that actually just wants change, return us to an economy for all people, solve the affordability crisis, give dignity to everybody across the state, and put an end to the culture wars. While we're at it, invest in public education, stop fighting communities and just start fighting crime. We can do all that on our side of the ticket. The other side will have to explain to voters what they're fighting for.
I used to live in Florida, and it's an interesting state with really 3 distinct regions. The Panhandle, the central part of the state, and then down in South Florida. So what's your plan? How are you going to hit those 3 parts and get your message across?
Yeah, I love that question, Mo, because I would say this in Florida, but also nationally. Democrats have to go into places we haven't gone in a long time. I've been doing town halls across the state. Somebody stood up and said, the last time a Democrat was in this hall, it was Lawton Childs. We have to be able to go into, now look, we lead with democratic values. right? I disagree with Democratic leaders who say we have to change our values, our positions. No, we don't. We need to amplify them. We need to amplify them in communities where we haven't done before. So that means sitting with the faith community, saying, I'm a Democrat because I believe in values that lift everybody up. And I think that better aligns with the faith teachings, whatever faith that is, the basics, right? We have to go to gun owner communities and say, I realize gun owners aren't the problem, but our gun laws are. And if we strengthen gun violence prevention in the state of Florida, we're going to save your kids just like we're going to save ours. We have to go into the ag community and say, your labor markets are tight because of the governor's policies. We want to create a pathway in Florida for immigrants to continue to support our economy and support our culture so that we can celebrate their contributions to the state. But we also have to be Democrats who are willing to go into the Cuban American, Venezuelan American communities in South Florida and do what hasn't happened in a long time, Mo. Democrats have to denounce socialism and communism and say capitalism provides the most opportunity for people, but we are the party that's going to fight for fair capitalism that actually lifts everybody up. And guess what? If it breaks down for you, we're also the party that recognizes you still need access to quality health care, to income security, and to an education for your kids. That's our party. Those are our values as Democrats.
Well, listen, I think it's great that Democrats have a quality, credible candidate running. So I really appreciate you stepping up and doing it. So, how can folks help out? Where can they get more information? Where can they contribute to help you win Florida?
Sure, Mo. I'm a candidate if I've got a website. davidjolly.com, davidjolly.com. But listen, if you can support us financially, please do. If you can sign up to volunteer, maybe you're in Florida or you'll be coming to Florida, please do that. Of course, everything helps. Here's what I'm asking people to truly do. Believe that this is a cycle where we can create change. I had to ask that question to myself, and my wife did as well before we got into this race. We believe in Florida in 26, a coalition led by a Democratic nominee for governor can win the race. And when we do, we will bring change not just to the state, but to national politics. Start by believing. And I bet if you do some soul searching, you already do. Most people who are following your podcast, who are engaged in politics, paying attention every day, they're doing it because they know change is possible. So start by believing that we can change the direction of the state and the country. And then if you have an opportunity to do more, to chip in some money, great, please do. davidjolly.com.
Hey, I've got to ask this question. If Byron Donalds is running for governor, is my old friend Madison Cawthorn going to run for that seat?
Oh, I don't know. I've been out of Republican politics long enough. They don't invite me into the family conversations.
Yeah,
and I'm
for
just
you,
getting into
David.
some of the Democratic ones.
Well, I always thought it was fair because Florida gave us Mark Meadows, so we've given you guys Madison Cawthorn. So I think the score is even.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't jump in there. But there's parallels between our governor's race, and I don't want to just highlight the color of skin, but we had a really terrific guy in Josh Stein who won against Mark Robinson, and I think Mark Robinson is very similar to Byron Donaldson down there in Southwest Florida, in that he has no experience, no agenda, and is really just in this probably for the money and the fame, and has no vocation in politics or public service. So let's hope your race goes the same way as that race did up here in North Carolina.
Look, I would say too many Republican leaders today stoke division, engage in kind of gutter politics, if you will, right? I'm not even sure Byron Donalds believes half of what he said about me since I got in the race a few days. It's just reflexive. And I think too many Republican politicians invite controversy, right? There's a lot of hypocrisy. People say, oh, Jolly's changed. Yeah, I have. I definitely have changed. I think a lot of voters have changed, and that's part of the strength of our candidacy. You know who else has also changed? Republicans. I mean, the party I used to belong to was for less government, for fiscal discipline and personal liberty. Now they're exploding the debt and deficits with this major tax bill that I'm sure Representative Donalds will support. They're for putting politicians in your classrooms, in your doctor's offices, and in your bedrooms. And so I think Republican leaders today, including Byron Donalds, probably Casey DeSantis, maybe Matt Gaetz, we'll see. They've got to justify how they've changed as well. because their positions are unrecognizable to traditional Republican values, but also to the values that most voters want, regardless of their political affiliation. This is a campaign where if our coalition that I have an opportunity to lead fights for an economy for all people, attacks the affordability crisis, says government should work for you, but most importantly, you're welcome in the state of Florida. You know, Republican leaders today, and including some of the language of Byron Donalds and others, they only want certain Florida families to be lifted up. I want all of Florida's families to be lifted up. If that's our contrast going into next November, let's have that contrast. I love that conversation because we're going to win this race.
That's great, David. And this happy warrior attitude of yours, or your personality, your view of life, I think goes a long way. I can feel how excited you are about this race. How's it going so far?
Good, except I've lost my voice in the first week. And look, this is a change environment, right? If you look at some of the reasons why Vice President Harris lost, there certainly were many, but one is too many Democrats stayed home. That's not happening right now. Democrats are turning out. We're seeing it in special elections. We're seeing it in town halls. There's an enthusiasm. But now we're also seeing the buyer's remorse from many Republicans, including some of our immigrant communities who supported Donald Trump, who said, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for the cruelty of the immigration policy. I didn't sign up for the broken promises. I didn't think you were talking about my family. But now we're seeing through Governor DeSantis and others this attack on the immigrant community, and they attack a community and then go looking for crime. But I also think we're seeing independents say, look, it's just time for a change. And that's the coalition. This is a coalition election. We are going to win this race because there are more voters in Florida that want change, that want more of the same. Let's have that conversation, because watch out. Watch out. We're going to win it when that happens.
Yeah, I think the immigrant community in Florida's got to be woken up. And it sounds like Trump's Latinas for Trump state senator down there is voicing
That's
her
right.
or a Republican is voicing her dismay with how they are treating immigrants.
Right.
So
David, let me share something with you on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me share something with you, because one thing I want to do in this campaign is have a national conversation where I think Republicans and conservative media have gotten away for too long with conflating immigration and crime. I want to decouple crime and immigration. We can be the Democratic Party that is tough on crime, but lift up communities. I think too many Republican leaders have started fighting communities and then they go looking for crime. We know statistically there's a higher propensity of violent and property crimes in native-born communities than there are in our immigrant communities. So let's start fighting crime. We can be the party that says, if you were born here, if you came here from another country or another state, or if you're a Republican politician stealing money from the Medicaid program, we're going to enforce the law. We're going to investigate it. We're going to prosecute it. We can be tough on crime, but lift up communities. I don't think that's what we're seeing from Republican leaders right now. Yes, that matters in Florida, but I think that matters as a national conversation as well for Democrats to start having.
You got it. All right, folks. Go to davidjolly.com, please. As my one of my employers used to say, give till it hurts, please. I can say that. David's not going to, but please do give what you can at davidjolly.com. It's important that he gets some early money to get things rolling. He can show some strength. Early money is very important to candidates. So again, I encourage you to donate and send David a positive note as well when you make that donation. And this has been a special from MUCK U. Our good friend David Jolly in Florida is running for governor, and we appreciate you coming on, David.
Hey, thank you, David. Thank you, Mo. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Up next on MUCK U is Anthony Scaramucci live from New York.
Welcome to the MUCK U podcast, produced by American Muckrakers. Let's roll up our sleeves and dive into the mess to uncover the truth. I'm your co-host, David Wheeler, and here to stir the pot, bring the energy, and keep things real. Let me hand it off to my co-host, the one and only Colonel Mo Davis. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, David. And thanks to all of you for joining in again on another episode of MUCK U. I'm coming to you today from down the eastern part of the state, Southern Pines, right outside of Pinehurst, where it is extraordinarily hot and humid. So it makes me miss being up in the mountains. But Another great guest today join us, and a real honor to have Anthony Scaramucci with us, who is a graduate of Tufts University and Harvard Law School. Had a very successful career at Goldman Sachs, started Skybridge Capital, was serving as a senior vice president at the XM Bank when he became a member of the Trump administration. So he's a prolific author. Anthony, I think you have, what, 7 books out and another one on the way?
7 books. Yeah, I like writing. I like reading and writing, Colonel.
Yeah.
So that's,
Well,
that's
you're also we appreciate you taking time to do our podcast, because I think you've got 3 going yourself. You have what, Open Book, that you do yourself. You got The Rest is Politics US with one of my favorite journalists, Caddy Kay, and Lost Boys with Scott Galloway. And I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of Scott until a few months ago, but boy, I'm really impressed with him. So you've got quite the array of podcasts.
Yeah, he's a terrific guy. Caddy, of course, I agree with you. She's not only one of my favorite journalists, she's one of my favorite people. I mean, not to dominate the conversation, but just quickly, I did not know Caddy when we started that podcast. And so we were put together sort of on a blind date for the podcast. And it's been 15 months of doing it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, you lucked out. I mean, I've seen Caddy, and she's pretty. I'm stuck with David Hoyler, so I'm. You got the better end of it.
I resemble that remark.
That's why you guys have an audio podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, we switched off your video, man.
Right, and the reason why I have an audio and video podcast has nothing to do with me. I'll just leave it.
I got you. Hey, listen, you kind of had an interesting transformation. You were a supporter of Barack Obama, started out as a supporter of Hillary Clinton, and then I think really sprung into the spotlight with Donald Trump. How did you make that transformation?
So, sometimes what happens is when people are trying to form a narrative about you, they go into your Wikipedia page and they dent your page and they put some truth information out there and some mistruths, and they try to tie it back to stories and so forth. But the truth of the matter is I gave Hillary Clinton a $2,000 check when she ran for the Senate in the state of New York. And this is probably in the year 2000, in that November 2000 election where she replaced Daniel Patrick Moynihan. So everyone says I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter. Barack Obama was a different story. I was heavily involved in local politics. I had worked for Mayor Giuliani. I had worked for Governor Pataki. I had a good relationship with Andrew Cuomo, still do, trying to support him for mayor. But I was never really on the presidential side. Barack Obama was a classmate of mine from law school. And let me be precise. He was exactly 2 years behind me in law school, but we knew each other. He was running for president, asked me for a donation. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm never going to meet a president. I might as well just give this guy some money. So I gave him money. It turned out I went to more Barack Obama Christmas parties than Donald Trump. But I've been a lifelong Republican. So those 2 donations, people try to characterize me as a flip-flopper and all this other stuff. And I get all that. But I had... you could find me on Mitt Romney's donor list, George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, et cetera, lifelong Republican. When Jeb came out of the race, Mr. Trump, President Trump, but it was Mr. Trump back then, asked me to join his campaign. I agreed to do so. We surprisingly, and I always say surprisingly to everyone, including Donald Trump, we won the election. He then named me to the presidential executive team, the transition team. I helped to build a cabinet, didn't go into the government. 6 months into the government, a lot of crazy things happening. He called me and he asked me to come down to Washington to see him. And he offered me a job. He was trying to get rid of Priebus and Bannon. And he offered me a job and I took it. And that was another big mistake for me, frankly. But anyway, I did take the job. I got my ego involved. I got my... I tell my kids, get your ego and your pride out of your decision making, because if you can do that, you'll make better decisions. If you can't do that, you could end up making a disastrous or catastrophic decision. But I did it. I went to go work for him. My wife hates Trump almost as much as Melania hates him. And so that's a very high bar of hatred.
Yeah.
Okay, because when you get hate from the Eastern Europeans, it's incredible amount of hatred. But anyway, I went to go work for him. We were fighting in the White House. We disagreed on a couple of issues. Some of this was procedural. Frankly, some of it was constitutional. Somebody paid me a compliment the other day. I guess it was a compliment because, I went through all your tapes while you were in the White House. You didn't lie for the president. I said, no, I did not lie for the president. Was I asked to? Yes, I was, but I didn't. And a result of which, 11 days after I was hired, I got fired. I got tossed around, guys. You want to talk about getting mucked? I was thrown into Pennsylvania Avenue, lit up by all the late night comedians, torched on Saturday Night Live. Every cable news pundit had an opinion of me, which was negative. 40 newspapers internationally put me on the front page, and as you know, and you know how they do this. They try to find that one picture of you where you look like a complete imbecile, and then that's the one that they drive because that's the real head turner. That's the real clickbaiter, if you will. And it was a difficult time, frankly, after I got fired. But I stayed loyal to President Trump. People don't remember that. My attitude was I wasn't going to be a crybaby complainer. I got fired. I took it like a man. 2 years later, some of the antics were reprehensible. I think I said on the Bill Maher show, I wish he wouldn't say that the women of the squad, these 4 women in the House of Representatives, should go back to the countries they originally came from, which is literally the quote he put up on Twitter. And he had started attacking me for saying that. And it was really that simple. And, David, before we started this podcast, you said this is right up your alley because you're a Long Island, New Yorker. Well, it is right up my alley. But one of the other things about me is I am from New York. And I think by the end of this podcast, you guys will realize I'm not Ted Cruz. I'm not going to kiss Trump's ass after he starts attacking my wife. And so he started attacking my wife, which is what he does. And then the real fight started. He lost in 2020 due to the Democrats' failure in 2024. He won again, but he's not my kind of a guy. He's a bro code breaker. He's incredibly dishonest. It's not the lying. Every politician lies. But what I told is it's deep layers of dishonesty, which are blended in with amorality. It's like a Carvel swirl of disloyalty and amorality and dishonesty.
Yeah. Hey, I'm curious. Folks that listen to the podcast know that when I joined the Air Force back in the 80s, my first courtroom experience, my opponent was a young captain from South Carolina named Lindsey Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've known Lindsey 40 plus years and worked with him and John McCain when I was the chief prosecutor for the terrorism trials down at Guantanamo. And, they were the two pushing back against the Bush administration for their abuse of executive authority. And, he clearly knows better, but he's made the calculation that it's in his benefit to go along. How do you explain so many people that, at points in their careers showed integrity that have just are in the tank now for the Trump administration?
Some of it's fear. Retribution and fear. I think in Lindsey's case, I know him reasonably well. I've been on his donor list. He's a lonely guy. Let's just call him lonely for the sake of this conversation. And he's a guy that doesn't have a lot going on other than the power base that he's created. And I think he realized that without Trump's help, he wasn't going to stay in that power base. The party shifted. It moved away from the old John McCain, Mitt Romney, George W. Bush sort of party. And so Graham made the decision that he was going to kowtow to Trump. I think John McCain would probably be spinning in his grave, frankly, if he knew what Lindsey was doing right now.
Yeah, I think it almost seemed like when McCain died that, Lindsey lost his conscience. And, some folks I think were just ignorant and got sucked into this whole MAGA thing. But there are people like him that clearly know better and have made the deliberate choice. Hey, let me ask you, you're on the Council on Foreign Relations. I'm involved with a group called the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, which I think are kind of like-minded organization. They believe in diplomacy and foreign policy and engagement and that kind of thing. What's your take on the current? Because you see the Republican Party was big on we're loyal to our allies. We were engaged around the globe. Free trade. What's caused this shift, and what's your take on it?
Well, you said something about conscience and having a conscience. Some people can fake having one, but don't really have one, right? So I think that's Lindsey Graham. I think he put up a facade of having a conscience. There's no way you could have a guy who's got this level of indictments, this level of criminal convictions, this level of malevolence, this level of stupidity, abject stupidity on economic policy, abject stupidity on diplomacy, in terms of how to handle our allies or even our adversaries. And a guy that is, Putin obviously has something on him. I don't know what it is, but he obviously has something on him because why would you be kowtowing to Vladimir Putin, especially at this time in our international history? So to me, I would say to you that Trump decapitated the former Republican Party. That party does not exist anymore.
Right.
Colonel, the rhinos are the MAGA people that call themselves Republicans. They're the Republicans in name only, not me. A rhino is Donald Trump. The party really should be renamed the MAGA Party. They decapitated the Republican Party and they installed themselves from the top down into that party. And so now that old party is sort of in exile, that party that you're talking about. So this ideology is a populist ideology. It's not conservatism. If it fits Trump's needs to put in some conservative judges, or if it's Trump's needs to signal pro-business and then be ridiculously tariffing everybody, which is a great contradiction, whatever fits his needs, he will do. It's a politics and ideology of the personality with very little to do with predictable policy.
Yeah, well, I'm curious as well. Like you mentioned, you were acquainted with Obama from Harvard. As a Harvard grad, what's your take on this assault on Harvard in particular, but universities in general?
So, I don't like what the president is doing. I think it's a big mistake to pull research grants and defense grants, and every person that I know is a byproduct, a beneficiary of U.S. government funded research. I'll just talk about myself for a second. My mom is unwell, but she has survived leukemia, a condition called CML, chronic myeloid leukemia, for the last 9 years, primarily because an NIH grant was given to the University of Pennsylvania, and they discovered in 2002, 2003, a drug that they call Gleevec, which suppresses and puts a leukemia into remission. And so she's lived longer than the life expectancy that she was supposed to on that drug, thank God. But if we're going to cut the NIH grants, that future drug that some family will need, guys, is not going to be available. So I wholeheartedly disagree with what President Trump is doing. However, I went to Harvard and I went to Tufts University, and these schools have ideologically radicalized. They have strained out, removed, canceled, you can use the word canceled, cleared out any conservative voices, any even middle of the road moderate voices. There is an orientation program at Tufts where if you're a white male, they want you to have 6 hours of education learning about your privilege and learning about the fact that you have to be sensitive and potentially kowtow to other groups because those groups were disadvantaged over the last several hundred years and your group wasn't. I don't know. I don't agree with that stuff. I'm sorry. I can't get my arms around that stuff. I cannot get my arms around Jewish men and women students at Harvard being physically threatened with violence, some from their colleagues and their adjoining students, others from professional protesters that have descended on the campus. It is private property, guys. They could be thrown off the campus. They're not paying students on the private property, but yet they're allowed to threaten Jewish men and women who are students to the point where they're locked in their dorm rooms or locked in buildings, fearing their safety. I don't agree with it, and I don't think that we should allow that with our taxpayer money. So I would have left the grants in place, left the NIH stuff in place, but I would have said to these universities, you got to get to the middle. You got to try to make at least the administration of these universities less partisan. I'm all for free speech. If you want to protest what Israel's doing in the war, I understand that. You have the right to peaceful protest. You do not have the right in the country to incite violence or harm other people as a result of your political opinion. So, some people like my opinion on this, some people don't. But I think canceling the funding is a horrific mistake, and it'll have consequences to our innovation, our healthcare system, and a whole host of other things, defense specifically.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the Democrats. One of the reasons Mo and I wanted you on the program was I listened to your conversation with John Heilman, and you're a very thoughtful person. I could tell. Obviously, intelligent, and you've got a connection to who you are and where you're from. It just seems to me that the Democrats would be morons if they didn't welcome a guy like you into the party in some way, even just on the periphery. Has that ever crossed your mind to become a Democrat or even run for office, Anthony?
I'm a very upfront guy. Yes, it has crossed my mind, but I can't become a Democrat because I'm not welcome in the party. And why am I not welcome in the party? I once worked for Donald Trump, so there's a good portion of the party that believes that I should be canceled because I once worked for Donald Trump. Okay, you have the right to say that to me. You have the right to cancel me if that's what you want to do. I worked with the vice president's team in preparation for her debate. I also went to Philadelphia at the invitation of the campaign to help her at the debate and then help in the spin room. Gavin Newsom and I were in the spin room together, fortifying the arguments that she made in the debate. They were very happy. Obviously, I think everybody objectively feels she won that debate. There were several people I would call the centrists that wanted me to go on the campaign plane with her. There were hard left people that said under no circumstances. And so they wouldn't let me go on the campaign plane with her. The Democrats are the best thing that has ever happened to Donald Trump. If you said, how did Donald Trump become president? It's because of the Democrats. It's Democratic losses as opposed to his victories. They claim that they are the party for the democracy. Yet they told Joe Biden in 2016, you cannot run in a primary process against Hillary Clinton. She's our anointed one. They then told Bernie Sanders, we're chopping you off at the knees. So much so that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chair, lost her job at the Democratic National Convention in July of 2016. Let me fast forward to 2024. They canceled the New Hampshire primary. Jimmy Carter didn't do that to Ted Kennedy, but they did that to the other Democrats that wanted to run against Joe Biden, some of which felt that Joe Biden was impaired and cognitively impaired. They knocked Bobby Kennedy out of the party, Tulsi Gabbard out of the party, and they blew Elon Musk out of the party. So it's a party that is fighting with itself. It's a party that's more focused on the picayune of policies and does not want to focus on the overarching purpose. And guys, I think they'll lose to Trump if they keep this up because, like or dislike him, he is the General Napoleon of the culture war. He sees the battlefield better than anybody in the culture war. And he knows how to trigger them. He knows how to send them on wild goose chases, etc. If they would invite somebody like me into their party, I think I could really help them because I understand the game plan of these other people. And I also understand the narrative. And by the way, I think it's a more popular narrative, the counter narrative to their approach, which I think would garner way more support and way more votes. So, and just remember this, I want to close on this. They not only botched all of that, they lied to the American people, tried to keep Joe Biden in place. He was sunsetting when they couldn't keep him in place, rather than having a mini primary, which would have been quote unquote pro-democracy. They anointed the vice president, nice person, but they only gave her 107 days to make the case against the most famous person on the planet. So listen, it's a frustrating thing. I'm sorry it was so long-winded, but I wanted to be comprehensive with that one.
No. Listen, you've got two friends here that, new friends that couldn't agree with you more, man. We are sick and tired of the party. We've been ostracized by our own party. I restarted the Iowa Young Democrats when I was 17 years old. I've been around. I helped Jimmy Carter's campaign in Iowa, folks. And you get no credit for any of that hard work earlier in your life in this party of today.
No question.
Who would you? And listen, I'm a naming names kind of guy. Who would you fault if you want to name names? I don't want to put you on the spot, but who is the far left that's driving this party into the ditch?
I mean, unfortunately, my old friend Barack Obama did a tremendous amount of damage to that party, and he did a tremendous amount of damage to the political zeitgeist and the culture war. And said differently, Van Jones, who was on the Obama staff in the White House and is now a color commentator, a political analyst at CNN, when Trump won the first time, Van said, "This is a white lash. This is a backlash of whiteism in America." And Obama could have been a transformative, post-partisan, post-tribal president, but he dug in. And so he created a lot of anger in the society, and a result of which we started a war with each other. We started a great culture war. So this emphasis under the Obama administration on quotas, and the emphasis on pronoun usage, and the emphasis on transgender bathrooms, and the de-emphasis on blue collar, lower and middle income families and policies that could potentially help them, the de-emphasis of that created a vacuum that Donald Trump exploited. So he's a major culprit. The other major culprit, frankly, is the Washington duopoly. So these guys are in bed with each other. Washington is not a swamp, guys. Washington is a gold-plated hot tub, okay? And they pass the cigars to each other, and they pass the Cristal champagne to each other, and they stay in office forever. They have figured out through gerrymandering, and they have figured out through their fundraising process how to keep themselves in office forever. The Congress has a 14% approval rating, which is slightly above Kim Il-jung, the North Korean dictator. Yet the incumbents have a 95% incumbent reelection rate. So that would be like having a terrible restaurant, having a terrible chef, has horrific Yelp ratings, but the chef itself never gets fired. And so there's a combo of a lot of different things systemically that are causing this problem right now.
Yeah, and there's also the consultant class, which probably part of
the
second part of that.
Consultant and lobbying class, sir. the
Yeah,
lobbying ones. Yep.
and then we've got donors on our side that dump millions of dollars into races that are absolutely unwinnable, which the consultant class loves again on Democrat and the Republican side. We're talking about Lindsey Graham. I posted earlier on Substack this week a whole analysis on his opponents and the amount of money that's been raised against him. And he consistently wins by 10 to 12 points. Even Jamie Harrison and I think it was 22 ran and spent $110 million against
Yep.
Lindsay's 75 and still won by 10%, which the guy before that had raised, I think, 16,000 and got the same percentage.
Yeah.
So I think it's a re-education and a refocus. As far as Obama, I doubt he believed in a lot of that shit that was foisted upon him. But again, it's that the staffing and the professional class within the Democratic Party that has driven this, frankly, this country and now the party and then this country into the ditch, as far as I'm concerned. And I know a lot of these people. I grew up in politics with them. I didn't choose the professional consultant route, and I don't have a home on the vineyard. But by God, I got 3 healthy, good kids and a healthy lifestyle out here in North Carolina. But I'm just sick to death that people like you and Kinzinger, why don't the Democrats find a race to run him in as a Democrat, for God's sakes? He could win in Illinois in a race. We've had a couple other folks on this show that have. Joe Walsh was on. Again, listen, he's a raging lunatic sometimes. So am I. We're supposed to be the party of open and welcome, but we don't welcome a guy like him that could win. And what do you see as an alternative for the party? We're trying to get folks to rethink how we operate as a party. If you were in control, or if you had some say, which I believe you should, what would you do differently as a party?
Well, I had this conversation with John Heilman, as you guys referenced, but also with Gavin Newsom. I did Gavin's podcast about a month ago, and I said to Gavin that you have such a historic opportunity. You could reset the entire political system for a generation, and all you have to do is open the tent. That's all you have to do. You have to go and win back Elon Musk. In response to that, no, we hate him. He got Trump elected. He's now canceled. Go and win back Bobby Kennedy. No, we hate him. Okay. Bobby Kennedy and Elon Musk really helped Donald Trump, whether you like it or not. That's what they did. And you could open the tent to Kissinger, Cheney, Christie, Romney. There's a whole selection of exiled Republicans, traditional Republicans. The Democrats could say, hey, we're sort of rebranding here a little bit. Yes, we have progressive ideas and some left-leaning ones, but we're a pro-democracy and we're a pro-principles and pro-system. We believe in the American system, the constitutional system of checks and balances, and a result of which come into our tent. Whatever the small differences may be on policy, we're focused on the purpose of saving America. And this has happened before. It happened in the 1850s when there was a party formerly known as the
Whigs.
Yep. They got toasted by the Republicans. It was 1856 in Wisconsin. The Republican Party got formed, and they did exactly what I'm saying. They went to the Whigs that wanted abolition. They peeled them off. They went to the Democrats that wanted abolition and peeled them off. And I'm telling you right now, it was a huge victory and probably saved the nation because Abraham Lincoln became president. And so for me, it's doable. Gavin said to me that it would be almost impossible in the current fever in the Democratic Party. It would almost be impossible to get that done. I find that tragic. At a time where we need these people, I find that tragic.
Yeah, I agree. But as Carville has suggested, fuck the far left and let them have their own party. I mean, form their own party.
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Mhm.
I
No,
just
I'm telling you.
sick to death that the way to shoehorn them into the party is just find a race to run them in as a Democrat, get them elected, and they can orient themselves once they're in office. And we can win back these seats. But the Democrats seem to have a problem with winning. They don't. They would rather, lose and be right than win and actually have an effect on people's
One,
lives.
100%.
Yeah. All
100.
right, Mo, back to you, bud.
Yeah, I'm going to hit you up for some free advice. I'm running for Congress in Western North Carolina in a district that's an R+5. The biggest group of voters are unaffiliated voters. In North Carolina, we got hit hard by Hurricane Helene, so we've got a lot of folks struggling to get back on their feet. So kind of the motto for my campaign is kicking ass for the working class, because they're the folks that have gotten left behind and are getting hurt by a lot of these policies. Yeah, any advice on how to reach people that in the past might have uh, been part of the MAGA movement, but they're getting hurt by these policies? How can I reach those folks?
Well, I'm going to give you some advice that somebody gave to me about life. There is no such thing as quality time. There's only quantity time. And it's against the cliche, but just hear me out for a second.
Sure.
The more time you spend on the road, the more time you spend in the district, the more time you spend burning shoe leather, knocking on doors, going to civic events, going to storefronts, the more identification, the better and sharper the narrative about who you are, what your policies are going to be, how you're going to represent people. And I'm going to tell you who is probably right now the best in the business of this. It's AOC. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's 2 districts away from where I'm sitting. She beat the pants off of Joe Farley. He was the incumbent. He took the district for granted. She showed on Twitter while she was doing this the burn up of her shoe leather on the various shoes as she walked the district, cajoling people for votes, pushing her agenda. And she's one of the hardest working people in politics. Now, I don't agree with a lot of her philosophy. I don't agree with a lot of things she wants to do, and I don't agree with the direction she'd like to take the Democratic Party. But I admire her, and I admire her work ethic, and I admire her skill set. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to run, okay, you got to do that. There's no such thing as quality time. It's just all quantity, block and tackle, and build the schedule to meet as many people as possible in that district.
Right. Well, listen, David mentioned we've had on David Jolly, who's now running as a Democrat in Florida for governor. Joe Walsh, who I guess last week, week before last, announced he's officially registered as a Democrat. We asked Adam Kinzinger. He said, "Look, you're clearly not welcome in the Republican Party. Could you see yourself being a Democrat?" And he said, if the Democrats opened the aperture and would take in from the center to the left, then he could see it. So,
yeah,
we've kind of got.
You ask great questions, guys. You asked me that question. I would be a Democrat if I felt that they would accept me.
Yeah.
I haven't changed parties yet because I always had that glimmer of hope that there might be some ability to end this personality cult. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we kind of feel like we've hit the trifecta with the 3 of them. So you'd make it the superfecta if we could bring you over too.
There you go.
Well, listen, I think it really does take. This is very myopic, I think, on the. And again, I guess I'm using a Democratic term, using words like that, but I just think they've been very short-sighted. This focus. We had Paul Begala on. I thought he was spot on when he said the Democrats spent too much time focusing on people that put their pronouns at the end of their emails rather than the people who have their name stitched above their pocket when they go to work in the morning.
Amen. And
we've got to get back to. To focusing on those people and listening to them and their problems. Well, listen, right. You've been a real breath of fresh air, and it's nice to see, someone that was kind of in the heart of the movement that with what seems like good sense and good values. So, man, good on you
Well,
for
what the big problem is for me, the pain for me is I have a lot of friends that are still with Trump. They hate his guts, but they like the power, they like the access to the White House, or they like living or speaking or working in the White House. But they'll talk to you privately. They're stressed out and they hate his guts. I don't know anybody. I have yet to meet. I know we're probably going to have to wrap this in a second, but I'll just say this here. I don't know anybody, and I mean anybody, that likes the guy. Nobody. Uh, but anybody close to his orbit in his interaction space where he has a one-on-one, 10-on-one, they find him to be angry. They find him to be insecure. They find him to be self-loathing. They find him to be a credit hog. The way some people are ball hogs in basketball, he's a credit hog. He doesn't like anybody getting any credit for anything other than himself. And he's just a miserable SOB. And so, you know, but he's got the name recognition. He's a pretty good communicator. He's a good campaigner. And they ran very shitty candidates against him. And that's where we are. That's why we are where we are.
So we're not really conspiracy theory guys, but doesn't stop us from talking about it a little bit. What are your theories on what Putin has on him, or the Butler assassination? Do you think that was real?
Well, listen, I don't know what Putin. Let me start with Putin. I don't know what Putin has on him. If the assassination attempt wasn't real and that man lost his life because of a premeditated false flag versus Donald Trump to raise his profile and to raise his uh, you know, political stature, increase the potential of him winning. I would believe it, by the way, because I know how evil Trump is, but I don't. It just doesn't strike me when watching the tape of it. It didn't look like it was contrived to me. But then again, I don't know. But on the Putin thing, I don't think any of us know what Putin has on him. But I will say this: Putin has something. Because when you have the window open and you hear clippity clop outside, it's a horse. It's not a zebra. Don't overthink it. Of course he has something because there's nobody that would be kowtowing to Putin like this. Putin has a dilapidated army. The U.S. could take this guy out very quickly. We've decided not to. He has a limited capability now with his, just think about the size of Russia compared to the Ukraine. And 3 years later, Ukraine is still fighting strong. If they just got the help from the West that they needed, I think they could finish the job. And remember, Russia was the invader. Trump has said to people that Ukraine started the war. Trump went and got sanctions on the Ukraine in addition to Russia at the UN. I mean, they have to have something. And you guys may know this, but I want to remind you of it. On the 5th of November, 2024, the evening of the election, state television in Russia was running naked pictures of First Lady Melania Trump. So if that's a big middle finger to Donald Trump. That's like, yep, we got something on you. We got something on you really bad that you don't want anybody to know about, and we'll use it against you, just so you know.
Yeah, well, I have followed General Flynn and Roger Stone and that whole cabal of outsiders. And that whole Butler thing just seemed like a Roger Stone, Michael Flynn operation. But
Yeah,
I don't have any evidence either. It's just conjecture.
I don't I don't disagree, but man, that's about as evil as it gets. You kill
Yeah,
somebody, you have a fireman that's been 20 years in service about to retire. He's
yeah,
sitting behind the candidate and he's killed, and his family loses their father because they had to contrive a political assassination attempt.
yeah,
I hope it's not the case, guys. I'll just tell you that. That's
yeah,
about the
yeah,
worst karma that you can come up with.
yeah. So have you ever thought about running yourself?
you know, you guys may remember this, maybe you don't. I mean, I almost got divorced when I when I was in the White House. Deirdre hates it. She hates the way people are treated in it. She doesn't want the backflow onto the kids. And so I always tease people and tell them, hey, I'm running for re-election in my marriage. I'm not going to be able to run for anything because one of the things that happens, guys, when you run for office, you automatically have to tell lies. As soon as you declare that you're running for office, your mouth starts moving in a bad direction. You say, well, why is that? You don't have to do that. Well, you actually do have to do that because there's always all these varying constituencies that you're trying to win over. So you're shading your policy this way, that way, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, Mo and I both run on several occasions. You're right, my friend. Although I'm a much better liar than Mo will ever be. So, all right. Well, Anthony, what gets you up in the morning? What keeps you moving besides your business, your beautiful wife and family?
Listen, I like what I do. I mean, mention my podcast. I like interviewing people. I like interviewing authors. I like analyzing the situation. I have a good rapport with Caddy. I've enjoyed this podcast a great deal. I like talking to people. I had the opportunity. I'm graced with the opportunity to do public speaking. And so I could be on 10 or 15 publicly paid public speeches a year, which is a lot of fun for me. It gets me in a little bit of a travel mode, gets me to meet people. I'd like to get in the gym. I like to travel with my wife and my obviously my kids. I took my kids to Epic Universe in Orlando last weekend. I think they had a fantastic time. And but I'm here for it, meaning I'm not trying to overcomplicate my life. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. If you come visit me here out on Long Island, I'm in a nondescript, it's an upper middle class house, but it's not a mansion because I don't want to put my kids in a situation of over entitlement where it ruins their lives. I think there's a paradox. If you're not careful, there's a paradox to wealth. You can end up very lonely. You get the big mansion, 15 acres, you're there by yourself. You buy the yacht, okay, great. No one on the cruise ship to share the chicken fingers with. You get the plane, that's great, but now you're alone again. And there's a paradox to wealth. We have to be careful with it. And so for me, I enjoy what I'm doing. If Andrew were to win the mayor's race and he asked me to do something that was an appointed position to help him out, I probably would consider doing something like that, or helping him on the economic development board, which is a part-time job, but is very influential in the city. Those are things I have interest in.
And the city's going to need you, man. So, and it looks like he's going to win, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. He's running against a real hard left socialist. I don't think that'll push the city into bigger economic despair.
Yeah. All right. Final words, Mo.
I can't, I think we've pretty much covered the waterfront. And listen, you've been very gracious with your time, and really appreciate you taking time to do this. I know you're busy, and it's a real privilege to have you on today.
Well, good luck with the race, guys. Hey. I really, really appreciate it, Colonel.
Well, we appreciate you having on. Appreciate
all right, Muck
joining us. You
got
it,
David, and Muck you, Mo.
That's right. All right, hold on. We're going to save that for the ending here. Hold on. I'll cue you, Anthony. That's all for this episode of Muck You. Thanks for joining us as we dug through the dirt and got to the core of what's really going on. I'm David Wheeler, your co-host, who loves to shake things up. It's been a blast sparring with my partner in truth, Colonel Mo Davis and Anthony Scaramucci. If you're loving what we're doing, head over to our website, AmericanBuckRakers.com, for more episodes. And if you don't like what we're doing, what do you tell them, Anthony?
I want to hear it. I always tell people, if you don't like what I'm doing, send me some comments. This way I can filter in the comments. If they make sense, I may make a change,
That's right. Well, in our case, if you don't like it, muck you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, muck you, David, and muck you, Mo, and it's great to be on with both of you.
Hey, I'm interested to hear you mention Gleevec. My stepdad was on that. It extended his life by over a decade. So that was a remarkable drug.
What's going on with my mom? Unfortunately, got other complications that are age-related now. But NIH, NIH.
I know.
They both are beneficiaries. I'm a beneficiary of these governmental grants.
Yep.
All right. Well, God bless you and God
Thank
bless
you.
her
Thank
too.
you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
God bless. Have a great weekend, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
This has been Muck You, co-hosted by Colonel Mo Davis in Asheville, North Carolina, and David Wheeler in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Thanks to our guest today, Representative David Jolly, a candidate for governor in Florida. Please donate and learn more about David Jolly's campaign at davidjolly.com. And thanks to the great Anthony Scaramucci for joining us. More on Anthony is at scaramucci.net. Special thanks this week to Christina Kazeze for helping us. You can learn more and donate to us at AmericanMuckrakers.com. Muck You is produced by American Muckrakers, copyright 2025.